Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto with Hinata, female Haku, Tenten, and Fu unlocked his limitless potential in a harem destiny, part 3. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 15. The team of 4 entered the village as one, the red-eyed woman in the lead, followed closely by a boy with a whiskered visage, a withdrawn-looking youth, and a brunette girl. The woman seemed indifferent, but all of her charges looked a bit anxious, being on their first, real, mission. It was typical genin behavior, knowing that they were beyond the safety of the walls that their home village provided, and had only themselves to rely on, and themselves to blame if anything went wrong. Regardless, Kurama decided to caution them, as if they even needed it. Remember, we are not on vacation. Even though it promises to be a very dull mission, if not a false alarm, we need to remain alert. We are not in the hidden leaf anymore. Any and every mission has a chance of combatants. Am I clear? Kurama stated, looking ahead while she walked. Hi, Kurama-sensei. Her students replied in unison, albeit in their own different ways. Alright, let's go see the mayor. Kurama turned aside a little to speak to a civilian, asking for directions to the mayor's office. Getting the directions they needed, the team made its way to the mayor's office. Soon arriving at an average-sized door entrance for a small L-shaped building, Yuhi knocked sharply. It was slightly eerie, but as if someone had hidden behind the door waiting for the said knock, it was instantly opened by a portly-looking man in an average-quality brown and black kimono. His facial features had all the makings of a 50-year-old grandfather who always smiled, but now it was creased in an expression of worry. Oh, you startled me, I was just on my way out. How can I help you? He answered, rambling off quickly. Oh, excuse me, we're looking for the mayor, Kurama answered. That would be me, my name is Kinko. He looked them over for the first time and noticed that each person had a Hitai-8 with the leaf insignia on them. I see. You're the team sent to investigate the unusual happenings. Good to see that you're punctual, he observed. Good thing I suggested that we should run. We made a great impression, Naruto whispered to Shino. Thank you for the compliment. If you may, if you're not too busy, would you explain in detail what this is all about? The red-eyed woman continued. I can, I'm not too busy at the moment. In fact, we can walk to the disturbed scenes while I explain. Teammate stepped to one side to allow the man to pass through the doorway, and the man locked the door behind him. He started to walk down the street while Kurama and her team followed closely behind. There isn't any trouble per se. The trouble lies that the scenarios are disturbing, the man began. When I speak of things moving, I mean that sometimes in the middle of the night, a few people claim to see some trees moving. Go on. She needed something less vague. The trees. I don't mean like the wind swaying or moving their branches. I mean that they move entirely as if they could walk, I was told. In all cases, namely around 4 dozen trees in total have entirely disappeared by morning. Disappeared. Hi. Not just trees are disturbed. Sometimes, the land itself shakes a bit, if ever so slightly. The mayor said. Earthquakes, Kinko-sama. Is this place on a fault line? Naruto asked. Why would that happen? He asked himself internally. Kurama hadn't a clue either. I'm not sure about a fault line, but the town does have an aquifer, a dried-up one. As for the quakes, they come and go quite frequently nowadays, especially in the nights. I'd describe them as very mild. It vibrates, I should say. Vibrates? The blonde asked, dumbfounded. The man nodded in answer. He decided to continue making his way to their destination. Once they arrived, they could see what he was talking about. In the meanwhile, he allowed them to rack their brains. Perhaps they could come up with some good theories. After 5 more minutes of walking, the mayor stopped and pointed into an empty field. What do you see? He asked. All of his companions raised a questioning eyebrow. What was this man driving at? The mayor watched them. He was going to see if they were really observant, as he heard that all ninja were. I don't know, Naruto answered. The boy stepped onto the field, looked around and scratched his head. He could see deep holes, overturned soil and some furrows. I can't make sense of this. He mumbled. What's so special about this? He looked around at the surrounding area, all of which were the same. His eyes settled on one small tree in a lone corner. It was only twice his height and devoid of leaves. Oh, The boy snapped his fingers, the trees are missing. But something's really off about these furrows, they were uprooted and dragged away. Yes. Kinko seemed relieved that they could figure out that much at least. If they couldn't see what was wrong without him telling them, then they probably wouldn't have figured out the conundrum of the big picture. He was a bit disappointed that it was a boy instead of his teacher who realized it. He hoped it was actually the case of her allowing the student to speak up instead of taking the credit, however. The boy had his mouth saying a silent, "Oh, so." Uprooted hole and dragged somewhere. That explains the holes, overturned soil and dragging furrows. We'll follow it later. But why were the trees removed? Who would move them or have anything to do with them? Are they special? I have no idea. They are about 24 missing from this location and another 24 missing over there, behind those other trees. He pointed to the right where tall oaks grew. I still can't figure out for the life of me what they would want with these trees, Kinko said. They're pretty common, so they're not rare, at least, not that I know of. It doesn't even have flowers, either. This is a bit bizarre, Kurenai remarked. Is there anything special at all about these trees? Are they worth any sort of money? Possess an exotic poison? Anything? Nothing. Even I have one of these trees in my backyard. This was baffling. Who would get off from stealing trees? And why would the ground vibrate? In the meantime, the mayor spoke to the musing team. You may accommodate yourselves in comfort in my humble town. While I know we may not have many worldly comforts such as the ones in the leaf, one can be satisfied by frugal means. He started to walk again to the village with the team trailing behind. A man walked with his companion along a winding dirt track that was beaten by feet. The two men were dressed in animal skins that were obviously crudely made. It made sense though, given their backgrounds and purposes. One did not wear their best when their work involved a lot of dirt, especially proved by the fact that the men's attire was soiled badly. How far along are we now? The first one asked. Won't be too long now, if it really is there, his companion replied shortly. You know how I feel about all of this. It feels barbaric. The first only spat to the other side of the path in his answer. Why do you keep bringing that up? If it's done correctly, everyone will get a little something, and we'll get the most. I'm telling you, that gold deposit is there, not some made-up legend. Just think about it, we'll be rich. Being able to do whatever we want whenever we want. Besides, if you back out, you'll be in the same boat as me. Shida, the second said as if admonishing him. Most of them didn't come willingly, you know. Sooner or later, if and when we strike it rich, those people will talk. They work for little and when they get a piece of the rewards, even the ones who came willingly will turn against us and tell the authorities. Promise them a little more of the cut. If they don't comply, kill them and get fresher blood to work with. Besides, if worst comes to worst, we threaten them to work and bury them when they fulfill their purpose. The now named Shida said. He shifted the large bag that was positioned over his shoulder to be a little more comfortable for carrying. The load was certainly heavy and his brother, Sato, was in no better position, seeing that he was also burdened by a similar weight as well. I still don't like this, Sato said hesitantly. You know that I was never one much for killing. He frowned. Unlike you. Shida chuckled as he kicked a stray pebble out of his path. Sometimes I wonder if we really came from the same parents, but you keep making me feel like we're two different fruits of two different trees. At most, all we really share are our looks and abilities. Well, at least I think I'm the better looking one anyway. He joked. Sato laughed. I don't know why I'm getting so worked up about. All of his previous concerns were now forgotten due to the easing tension. Even if we're twins, you're still the uglier bastard. He lightly jabbed his brother in the ribs, almost dropping his own bag. He looked around at the change in scenery, depicted by the difference in flora and lack of even a footpath now. The brothers soon came up to a very large and shady tree. They now removed the 6-foot bags off their shoulders and very carefully laid them down on the ground. They looked around and sensed for anyone who could be watching them but couldn't find any. They bent down next to the tree and opened a sliding lid panel in the ground that revealed only darkness, as if looking into a well. They dropped their baggage in there first and looked to each other as if asking the other to go first. Sato nodded and went down the hole while Shida watched him go. Shida grinned. Soon, it will all pay off. In cold hard cash. He followed in after, closing the top behind him. Naruto paced the room while Shino watched him. If he continued much more, he would soon wear a rutted-out path in the floor. What do you think, Shino? He stopped and asked. The Aburame was seated on his own single bed trying to make sense of what had happened as well. Both Naruto and Shino shared a room in the local inn, across the hall from their female counterparts of the team. While he wouldn't admit it, he liked having the blonde for a roommate, seeing that the lad was now a very brilliant thinker. After all, he figured out the mayor's puzzle earlier when he himself had no clue. He might be a good person to reason with in the future. If it's one thing the members of his clan prided themselves in and gravitated towards, it was possessing very rational thinking at all times. There is something indeed special about those particular trees. Why else would they take trees of only that variety? The clan heir thought aloud. That's what I'm thinking as well. It can't be physical properties like height and size and location and such. There are trees taller and shorter, some easier to reach than the ones stolen and all that. Do you think we are making mountains out of molehills, Naruto-san? No. Yes, maybe. The mayor said that all privately owned trees are still present. Only 2 of those tree groves were taken. It could be that some drifter with a passing interest in botany recognized them for some unique purpose. But why take them at night? Someone took them at that time, obviously not wanting to reveal themselves for who they are. That's very suspicious behavior. And what about the ground slightly shaking? Both situations are connected, somewhere. He stated, starting to pace again. Maybe someone around here has some knowledge in botany can tell us about that tree. He stopped and looked at his teammate. Wanna come along? The stoic boy got up. Very well. They exited the room and informed their sensei next door that they were going to look for a botanist. She gave her consent a bit more reluctantly than she would have liked, but the boys didn't notice. They exited the inn and walked down the street. They were traversing in silence before Naruto broke it. Hey, Shino, can I ask you something? Said boy turned his head to the boy, waiting to be asked. It's about your Kikaichu beetles. What did they eat, seeing that I have never seen you feed them? Shino sighed inwardly. It was an innocent question. There was no morbid fascination or disgust about it. All they eat is chakra. Chakra. So does that mean they eat yours from time to time? Yes. Quite frequently, in fact. It is in some ways owed to them for aiding me in my battles. So I'm guessing that your reserves are basically a restaurant. Naruto chuckled as he thought of the complications. Did they leave behind biological waste? The Aburame almost smiled. He had to give some congratulation to Naruto, though. He had asked the previous questions to lead up to this one, or try to figure out if his residents left excrement in his body. No, they do not. It's a very profitable case of mutual gain for both sides. I give them some chakra and in exchange, they help me fight in my battles. I see. They walked to the center of the village and asked someone for the directions to a botanist or local florist. To their dismay, the only florist they had in the village had passed on several months prior, but they were told that her sister had some passing knowledge on the subject. They finished getting the woman's address and soon found her home. She lived in a double-story building, her store on the ground floor, which just so happened to be undergoing a conversion to be an extended new portion of living space of her home. The boys knocked on the door and waited for a response. Sure enough, it came. Coming. A woman's voice answered. The reply seemed to have come from upstairs. Soon enough, the woman opened the door. The boys took in her appearance. She was dressed in a casual yellow blouse and an ankle-length green skirt which fit her slim body quite well. While a bit nondescript in facial appearances, she had a rather bright smile blessed by dimples as she welcomed the boys. Good afternoon, Shinobi-san, she said softly in a mild rural-esque accent, all the while staring at the 2 boys, particularly their forehead protectors. At first, she thought they were too young to be ninjas, but she decided to let it slide. Who was she to judge? The world was pretty damn big, after all. How can I help you? Hey yourself, the blonde said plainly, obviously wanting to get to the point of his visit as quickly as possible. We're trying to find out information about a certain type of tree that has started to go missing recently. Naruto asked. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Come on inside. She stepped aside to allow the boys passage inside past her. Upon entering, the first thing the young ninjas noticed was that the room was filled with plants, So much so that they occupied all surfaces that weren't already filled, but in some cases they were placed on top of those things anyway. On tables, on books, on the ground, all over. Even though most of them were plants that were currently flowering, it still made the room look messy instead of beautified. The woman saw them looking over the room and chuckled a bit. My sister was a flower fanatic, she explained lamely, but I kept them around because they're all we really shared. The woman's eyes glazed over a little. Never mind. May I have your names? The Uzumaki and Aburame looked at each other before Naruto answered. My name is Naruto and his name is Shino. Yours? My name is Bye-bye Jinshin. Now, you said that you were asking about those trees that started disappearing. She said to the blonde. He seemed to be more inclined to speak anyway. Yeah, can you tell us about them? They started disappearing 3 weeks ago. Not all at once though. At first, they disappeared by twos, then threes, and then before anyone realized it, they were all gone. At first, we thought that someone could have been clearing land for living space, but now we all know that it was all about those trees. Oh, Shino said to himself. Do you have one of these trees in your possession? He asked. Yes, I have one behind the house. She turned on her heel and beckoned them to follow. They obliged and passed through another room that had a door open which was slightly ajar. The boys started to follow the woman a bit more closely, seeing that this door led outside, judging by the sunlight that wafted in through the door jamb. Jinshin led them through it to behold that the woman had more than just a few trees in her yard, mostly those that bore fruits. Naruto's stomach growled audibly at the sight of those trees, much to the woman's amusement. She invited him to freely partake while Shino followed her to the tree in question. Arriving at the tree's location, the boy could not believe what the fuss was all about, seeing such an unremarkable tree. It looked like a 10-foot-tall hedge tree with a very supple trunk that swayed. That's it, Jinshin remarked offhandedly, yet in a way to show that she probably disliked the damn thing. I see. Do you what it's called? I don't know what its right name is, but my mother said that people from her generation called it Tonikawota. Don't know why though. Also, my sister used to use the leaves to make tea often. She was very peppy, though, drinking teas from all kinds of trees and plants. She was a bit adventurous and airheaded like that, not knowing what's poison from what's not. I only drank it once at her insistence, but I didn't like the taste. The woman seemed to look off into space again before shaking her head to gather her thoughts. Ka-chan and Enerugi. I love them, even though they were downright stupid with things like this. She looked at Shino. I'm sorry, did you say something? Yes. Would you mind if I took a handful of leaves for my own research intentions? You may. The boy grasped some of the leaves and picked them. Thank you for your time, bye-bye-san. I hope that our efforts will provide results. You and me both, Shino-san. The red-eyed woman got up off of her single-sized bed and made her way to the window and looked out, feeling a bit undermined. The mayor had practically told them what the problem was, and yet she was outdone in thinking by a genin. A genin. Even more so, one who was supposed to be the dead last of his year. Hell, he was still clueless about Hinata. He might be smart, clever, sly, knowledgeable, but still oblivious to the simple things. Kei Kurenai-sensei. Yes, Hinata. The Jonin acknowledged the girl who had been silent the whole time. I have been thinking about the relationship between you and Naruto-kun. She sat up on the bed and braced herself with her arms backward, facing her teacher. Okay. What about it? She did not like where this conversation was going. It's not my place to say, but it seems that you dislike or hate him. The girl continued. Especially on the day the team was formed. You knew him already. We may not be each other's most favorite person right now. Yuhi made an attempt to try to make a very slight dodge around the question. We are merely members of the same team, there is no rule that stipulates that we have to love all team members. So you don't like him then? You dislike him. Is it because he is an orphan and everyone else of the rookies, or C-clan heirs or have notable B backgrounds? In a sense Hinata was right. Even though Sasuke himself was an orphan, he was a clan heir to the Uchihas. Even Sakura's mother was on the council. No, far from it. I don't dislike him because he is an orphan. Kurenai realized her blunder too late, having just admitted to detesting the boy. So is it because of what happened at Training Ground 4? He seemed to know why you already when you met us. Kurenai knew that she couldn't tell the girl the S-ranked secret that haloed the boy. While it may have been tempting to potentially rid the girl of her infatuation with the boy, it might not work, considering that she heard that the girl had far too much naivety, something that she inherited from her mother. Besides, even if it worked, Kurenai would be dead, never to see it Hinata's breakoff happen anyway. He pranked me in the past. It was a lie, but believable. Naruto had a rather impressive streak of pranking in the past. But she forgot that the boy had some kind of creed when it came to pranks. Most people knew that he only pranked people who deserved it though, so. Really? What did you do to him? Kurenai cursed. Why was the girl so inquisitive? But what was worse, she couldn't answer the question. Naruto hadn't done anything to her while in return she had snubbed him. So what did she hate the boy for? I can't recall doing anything. I mean, what brought this conversation up, Hinata? Now the Hyuga was the one on the spot, stuttering like mad. IIW wanted to know why everyone seems to hate him. I don't see anything wrong with him, or see him do anything wrong. She blushed a deep shade of red. Kurenai sighed inwardly in relief. It was really getting awkward, and while she felt a little guilty capitalizing on the girl's emotions to stop its potentially dangerous outcome, she knew that was a way of the ninja. To exploit every weakness, strike every crack and attack every Achilles heel. As she thought of this, a knock came at the door. Kurenai refocused her attention to it and tried to get a sense for the chakra signatures behind it. Oh, it's Shino and Naruto. What did they want? But she'd rather just pretend that she didn't know who they are. Who is it? She asked. Shino and Asam-sama, Naruto replied from the other side. May we come in? You may. At least he has manners, she thought. With that blasted cheek on him. The door was pushed open by the blonde and he entered. Close at his heels was the more stoic of the pair. They momentarily looked around and spied 2 chairs at the foot of each bed. The boys each took a seat and looked at their sensei. Well, we've been trying to do our own little investigative work and we've found out a couple of interesting things. The Uzumaki said, looking confident. He was sure that they were making some progress. She raised an eyebrow. What have you found? She tried to keep the irritable tones out of her voice. Perhaps the credibility that came with figuring out what was wrong could have gone to his head. Am I jealous? For starters, we found out about how and what the tree looked like, fully grown. It's basically a hedge tree, and what's more, just like the mayor says, it's useless, especially when you compare it to the other plants and trees in the vicinity. They're not worth money or poisonous, like what you said this morning. We were told by a botanist's sister that she had drunk it as tea, along with her mother. Naruto recalled. But in every situation, where they were growing in abundance, they were in a sense, reaped. Also, they are fairly common around here and only a few people, like 5 or so, had complained that they lost this sort of tree. But Shino did his own research, too. Naruto made the universally recognized air quotes when he said, research. It's true. I have some of the leaves with me. The Aburame took out a small handful of leaves from his pocket. Do you recognize it, Hinata? Naruto asked. I remember when you said you did flower pressing. I'm thinking that this tree may have had flowers, and since you research plants, you might know more about it. I'm sorry, but I can't help. I only pressed flowers I bought. To continue, Shino said, pulling everyone's attention. I had 2 of my Kikaichu sample a leaf each and they became erratic and uncontrollable. They became hyperactive and died in 10 minutes after eating it. They couldn't tell me what was wrong with it. I believe that Hinata-san might see something in the leaves with her Byakugan. Hinata looked to their sensei, who nodded in response. She made her unique hand seals and activated her dojutsu. Instantly, all color left her field of vision and was replaced by different shades of gray in all directions. She then observed the leaves Shino held out in front of her, seeing nothing unusual about it at first. Until she looked more closely in the veins of the leaf and saw that chakra ran through them, almost like a miniature chakra network. But it was so tiny she doubted that it had any real significance. She saw that in every leaf. She also failed to notice that the chakra in the leaf was of a darker hue, but it was harder to tell since chakra was overall less in quantity. I don't see anything unusual. Even the chakra in the leaf is a bit lower in amount in comparison of other leaves on more important trees I've seen in the past. Hold on there, Naruto said. Trees have chakra in them. Yes, Naruto, the woman sighed, giving Naruto the impression that she was exasperated with him, or worse, thought he was stupid. All living things have chakra running through them. Hinata, thanks for your effort. You may deactivate your Byakugan. Said girl's Byakugan always made the girl look as if she was glaring. Glaring really didn't really suit her and it really disturbed the Jonin, not that she would ever admit it. As I was saying, all living things contain, create or store chakra. But obviously this particular plant's appeal can't be about the chakra if what Hinata said is true. So what else did you find out? Naruto spoke up. While I said earlier that it wasn't poisonous, after seeing Shino's Kikaichu die from consuming it, I started to suspect that it may have some sort of bad element to it that may be poison, or at least to Kikaichu insects. The botanist's sister told me that her mother and the botanist herself drank tea from that tree's leaves but didn't suffer any adverse effects. But I did note that she said that the botanist was very energetic, like Shino's insects before they died. She also died fairly early in life, but since this town is behind in progress, everyone just said that she died from natural causes. It wasn't autopsied. Kurenai looked thoughtful. So, you believe that the woman might have been drinking this so-called tea for a long time before it finally poisoned her, but due to the Kikaichu's size, only one large dose was enough to kill them in minutes. But someone wouldn't want this plant for poisonous purposes. There are other more effective poisons that kill in minutes or very slowly, all in 1D dose. Hinata remarked matter-of-factly. Perhaps they would want it for the energy properties. We know that the woman was described as very energetic. And my insects were also hyperactive in nature. Shino noted. That still doesn't make much sense. After all, soldier pills offer chakra and a lot of tonics and enhancers, or even eating more carbs provide more energy. Hell, just drinking coffee makes a shit ton more sense. This tree barely does anything useful, and it kills you. Naruto said, getting a bit confused. Perhaps we should sleep on that matter. We should try to look for answers about the earth shaking now. Kurenai suggested. Hinata, can you look into the ground with your Byakugan? No, Kurenai-sensei. It wouldn't be productive because mine isn't DD developed enough. But even if it were, the Byakugan wouldn't be able to see more than 30 meters below the ground. It's too thick and the G ground is like a neutral zone that can't be seen through so easily. The Uzumaki was thoughtful. What about where the trees were uprooted where we visited with the mayor? I remember seeing tracks where the trees were uprooted. We could just follow those, see where it leads. Beats sitting around waiting for things to happen again tonight. Let's go. Kurenai told them. They left the inn and started ninja sprinting back to the site and started looking around for the tracks. Soon, Shino found where all of them conjoined and created one large dragged line in the soft dirt. He beckoned to his team and they started to walk and follow it, Kurenai in the lead as usual. Hey, Kurama. No response. Kurama. Shut the hell up. I'm trying to sleep. What do you want? To say hi. Naruto joked, knowing the impending hilarity that was going to ensue. The kitsune groaned. Hello. Now, what do you really want? Something really risky. And I want you to be my conscience. You know, that voice in the back of my head that tells me not to. What did I miss? Just listen to this conversation. You'll know. Hey, Shino. The Aburame looked to Naruto with a questioning vibe. Can I have one of the leaves? Kurenai turned around to look at the blonde. What do you need it for? The boy grinned. I'm going to eat it. Hinata paled, thinking of the complications. Naruto-kun, you can't. Shino gave the boy the leaf, which was poised to eat it. Already in metaphorical hot water where the Hokage was concerned, but not wanting to advise the Jinchuriki, Kurenai wasn't sure if she should warn him. Regardless, she did it anyway. At least that way if he persisted and killed himself, she could say that she tried to stop him. Naruto, don't. We still aren't sure what it does and all who've consumed it have perished. What is it? Poison. Kurama almost yelped as he caught the gist of what was going on. Are you going to poison yourself on purpose? Of all the bullshit you've ever done, you're going to poison yourself. Relax, Kurenai-sensei. My abilities will negate the poison in it if there is any. Besides, it will tell me what's in it. The male clan heir lifted an eyebrow over his shades. What ability is that, Naruto-san? There it is. Something that is kept a secret from all of us. What is he hiding? I'm just a great taste tester, Naruto joked, besides, it doesn't kill people with one leaf. He raised the leaf to his lips. Hinata still looked worried. Don't. No. It was too late. He already ate it. A hole opened in the ground via a lid that revealed two men that started to emerge from its inky black darkness. The men climbed out and dusted themselves off. They appeared to be very pleased with themselves, judging from their facial expressions. Well, they started to work again. I told you it would be a good concoction. I just hope that this Tonikuota batch doesn't kill them like the last couple of workers. Yeah, guess you were right, Shida, the other said to the one. But how long before the town catch wise? The longer we stay, the more suspicious everything gets. They might call for ninjas to sniff us out. Bah, they're not going to miss a couple of trees. Besides, I've even heard that a lot of people have them at home. We didn't steal anything cause that wasn't privately owned land, just an open field. Speaking of which, did you cover up the tracks we made when we dragged the damn trees? Sato's eyes widened in urgency. Oh shit, I forgot. I was supposed to do that yesterday. Shida sighed. It can't be helped. You'll just have to do it now. Sato started to ninja sprint to the field, using earth manipulation to level out all of the telltale signs of evidence foolishly made. Shida looked at the retreating figure of his brother. Why did he have to be so short-minded? He shrugged and decided to head back inside the hole. As he did, he thought of how his brother was starting to second-guess every decision he made for their betterment, every choice to benefit them. He was sloppy, made unnecessary mistakes. On the eve of their success, his own brother was fast becoming a liability. The team watched Naruto regarded Naruto with different emotions. One with worry, one with curiosity and the last one with mere interest. Well, you said that your ability would tell you what it was made of. Kurama said. Give it a minute, the Uzumaki replied. Ah, what a horrible taste, though. She must have only drunk that tea for the effects, not the taste. No wonder her sister didn't like it. What did you find, Kurama? I found out that it tastes bitter. My recent expectations of your intelligence had been plummeting to new lows, but holy shit, kid. Not that. The leaf has some natural chakra in it. Chakra, huh? The boy said out loud, also telling his teammates who started thinking about the response. Yeah, this chakra, as you can guess, can be found in nature, big surprise. It is a much stronger variant of regular chakra inside of people that the normal shinobi use for their techniques. I understand. I'll just do some research on it later. But if it's stronger, doesn't that mean it's better and more efficient? Not always. Many types of nature chakra have disastrous side effects. There's a variety of natural chakras. Of course there are. Perhaps this one's side effects is death with extended use or a large overdose like what I just learned about Shino's Kikaichu. So you'll be fine. Oh, it looks like the chakra is trying to improve your strength and give you an energy boost, Okami. What? The last thing I need to see is you getting hyperactive again. Naruto's sweat dropped. So that's the diagnosis. More chakra, stronger, hyperactivity. Yeah, now leave me alone. I want to sleep. He cut the mental link creating the conversation and turned back to his team members. The leaf had natural chakra. Natural chakra. Everyone echoed. Actually glad to have them listen to him so keenly for once, the Uzumaki continued to explain what the Kyuubi told him about the leaf's properties. He even went on to assure them that he would be fine. I understand. Although it L looked the S same, the N natural chakra is far M more potent. The blue-haired girl was relieved and a tad insecure about her previous observation. B. But how did you know it was natural C chakra? Naruto panicked. How was he supposed to tell her how he knew it was natural chakra without telling her about Kurama? I came into contact with it before. I read up on it while I was in the village so I knew how to identify it, he lied. Kurenai nodded knowingly while her other students accepted the fib. That's fine. Let's continue. Shino asked Naruto how he got his ability and what sort it was. Naruto considered how he and Shino have been on fairly good terms and he deserved to know. But not yet. I'll tell you later. That's a promise. I'm still trying to figure it all out. He was solemn. The bug user merely nodded in response. He was curious, that much was true. But he didn't doubt the Uzumaki. There was nothing to suggest that he wouldn't tell him. From what he'd observed, Naruto appeared to be someone who acted indifferent, wanting to be away from everyone else, yet somewhat yearned for attention and companionship. He'd tell him. Shino knew he would. The team continued to walk along the tracks when they were suddenly stopped by the teacher who held out her hand sideways. They were instantly alert, fully lucid as their teacher was. A man dressed in animal skins walked out from behind a tree, waving his hand in a friendly greeting. Hi, I'm a bit lost and I'm trying to find my way back to the town. Would you mind pointing me in the right direction? He added, grinning sheepishly. The team looked at the man with interest. Kurenai was still suspicious of the fact that the man had traveled really stealthily, and she only became aware of him when he was close by and was walking from the direction that the dragging furrows were going. The junior members dropped their battle stances, convinced that the man in front of them was a civilian. It's that way, mister. Naruto pointed in the village's general direction behind him. You're not too far, though. Is that so? Thanks, young man. I'll be on my way. He started to walk past them and the team let him pass, seeing nothing wrong. The man continued walking briskly, his figure soon shrinking as he traveled into the distance. Let's continue, Team 8. Yuhi urged and they resumed following the tracks, but all too soon they came to an abrupt end in the forest. What? Where are they? Naruto appeared perplexed. They just upped and vanished. This was too goddamn abnormal. What do we do, sensei? Hinata asked. All of a sudden they heard an explosion and the ground beneath them broke away, revealing a gaping hole filled with rock-pungy spikes. They hovered in the air for a brief millisecond before starting to fall. Kurenai disappeared in a plume of smoke, indicating that she had replaced herself with a Kage Bunshin from earlier, but her students were starting to freefall into the pit. Her substitution had placed her in the trees, and to her shock, to get to her students she would have to jump down into the hole with extra force, but her descent would cause her to fall to her death faster than she would be able to react. She could not save her students. She had taken an espionage tactic when it should have been a counter-ambush tactic. Suddenly, Shino materialized in another tree, also an apparent substitution with a clone, a bug one. But that meant that Naruto and Hinata were about to die. From his point of view, the Uzumaki only perceived the world as going mad. The explosion rocked the earth beneath his feet and the ground broke up and collapsed, revealing a pungy death trap. The boy panicked, but his hands instantly moved on their own using reflexes and grabbed Hinata's wrist with his left hand and grabbed a kunai with his right hand from his kunai holster and dug it into the earthen wall. It started to slow his descent considerably, but it would still be enough to skewer them on the spikes that rushed up to approach them. His focus now returned, and with it, his understanding of the situation. Hinata-chan, grab my waist. The girl, who was in a state of panic and her mouth contorted in a silent scream, grabbed the boy around his waist in a hug. The boy whipped out another kunai, this one from his left sleeve, stabbed it into the side of the pit as well, finally slowing them to a stop. He held on to the kunai that were now way over his head, his hand now at full extension. Naruto gritted his teeth and pulled himself up to them, now at chest level, before gathering his bearings. That's when he saw. All around the trap were paper bomb tags, mostly at the top of the hole. His eyes widened. Shit. He quickly made an overhand pass with his left hand over the right kunai. He braced only on his left hand on both kunai handles sticking out, the elbow on the left one and gripping the right in his palm. The lad pried off Hinata off his waist with his right hand and held onto her hand. Go, Hinata. He threw the girl out of the hole where she was caught by her teacher, who heaved a great sigh of relief. 2 seconds later an explosion filled the hole, with fire spewing out of the top in all its fury like a miniature volcano before the hole collapsed in on itself, sealing Naruto inside, leaving the hapless boy to his fate. Naruto-kun. The girl started to weep for the boy inside while the teacher looked on, not sure what to believe, whether if the boy was still alive and kicking, or if he had sacrificed himself to save her student. From Naruto's point of view, prior to the final explosion, he saw Hinata's form disappear outside the top, leaving him alone. His heart thundered in his ears and, on quick thinking, created 2 Iwa Bunshins with Kurama's help. Instantly the 2 clones appeared beside him and grabbed him as they started to fall together towards the spikes once more, their combined weight too much for the kunais that Naruto was supporting himself with. At the last second, Both clones managed to pull off the underground projection fish technique into the wall whilst still hanging on to their creator, just barely before the explosion rocked the pit. Outside, some distance away, the girl was being comforted by her teacher while Shino was skeptical. There was no way a guy could manage to blow up so many acres of a training ground and not survive a low-level explosion like that. People talented with explosives were generally able to handle not getting blown to bits, right? 1 minute later, a small portion of the ground was pushed up and penetrated by 2 pairs of hands. This attracted the rest of Team 8's attention to the growing development. 2 Naruto doppelgangers pushed through the collapsing entryway of the hole and pulled themselves out. They then lied down near the maw of the hole and reached a hand inside and pulled out the original, who appeared disoriented. He himself was still barely able to do the technique to travel underground. The girl stopped crying and ran over to the boy and hugged him tightly, even though he was too out of it to notice. Arigato gozaimasu, Naruto-kun. Wa, Hinata-chan. Said girl blushed a deep shade of crimson and stopped hugging the lad. The Iowa bunchins who watched the scene grinned before they dispelled into rocks of assorted sizes. Naruto roused himself back to lucidity and stood up. Quote, Naruto, you're the only person I know who says that after a near-death experience, Shino said. Naruto could have sworn that he smiled while saying it, but his high collar hid it. Yeah, I'm a unique person, Naruto grumbled as he checked to see if he was hurt anywhere or missing any fingers and toes. I'm fine. So are you all right, Hinata-chan? That explosion was no joke. No shrapnel, right? The girl's original limpid complexion became like that of a tomato, before bowing to him. Hi. Thank you. Ah, you thanked me already. That's what we're supposed to do. Look out for each other. You would have done the same for me too, I bet. Good thing I ate that leaf, if I wouldn't have able to expend myself so much physically. Kurenai seethed when she heard that. Nonetheless, someone tried to kill us. Something worth protecting is out here for someone to go that far. It could even have been that happy-go-lucky man who passed us. He could have been a ninja who set this up. Guess so. Everyone looked to the source of the voice and saw the same man who they had passed earlier was about 30 yards off away from them, his upper torso sticking out of the ground in such a manner that it appeared as if it was melded with the ground. He now wore a Hitai-8 that bore the symbol of Iwagakure. The Kyuubi saw the man through Naruto's eyes and frowned. Naruto only suspected heritage, and the last thing he needed was resemblance to the Yondaime Hokage when Iwa was already gunning for Konoha blondes. Naruto would learn about who his parents were eventually, but not now. Naruto, raise your hood and keep it on. The boy obliged, no questions asked. If he had any, he would just ask them later. The man regarded the action but did not take real note in it. You have no business here. This is private property, he said to the group. We're traveling. The woman answered the lie with one of her own, fully aware that the man was a shinobi who wanted to dissuade them from going any further, probably to hide something she had theorized about. We need to pass. This is the quickest way to our destination. Isn't this T the same person who passed us going T to the village? Hinata asked. The man saw that he could no longer keep up the charade and threw 4 kunai at the team as quickly as someone could blink. They responded by dodging and the combatants started fighting. Doden. Zetsubo no Karachi. Earth release. Despair's clutches. The man slammed his palms against the ground and releasing a lot of his chakra into the technique. The soil instantly went from dry into a form of quick mud that caused everything above it to sink. The team leapt into the trees before the ground destabilized to trap them, but the trees started to sink. Apparently the jutsu could have very well extended into the sub-levels of soil in an effort to bury them alive. Kurenai cast a genjutsu on the man to make him think that the jutsu had already succeeded in killing them in the hopes of him canceling it. He fell under the guise while Shino sent his kikaichu to drain the man's chakra, hoping that he'd run out before the jutsu murdered the team. As they settled on him, he broke the genjutsu's hold over him and substituted with a log. No longer feeding chakra into the technique, the ground stopped pulling things into it and solidified, making it safe to traverse. The team dropped out of the tree branches onto the ground. The tall trees now resembled glorified stumps with branches at this point, only a few meters off the ground. Hinata activated her Byakugan and started to look around for the man but couldn't find him. It was even worse seeing that the man's chakra in the ground, as it only made the ground look blurry. Do you see him, Hinata? Kurenai asked. No. There's too much of his sea chakra in the G ground. Naruto nodded and created 2 Iwa Bunshins who sank into the ground using the underground projection fish technique. Moments later he received their memories. This man, whoever he was, is a professional at that same jutsu. He had disposed of his clones so skillfully it was like a work of art. His sixth sense kicked in, making him jump away. Everyone, jump! He yelled in warning. They also leapt away as they were told as dozens of rock-branched spikes extended out of the ground where they were a second before. Doden, Raijingusukyu. Earth release. Rising skewer, a muffled voice sounded from underground. They regarded the spectacle with horror, but Kurenai was merely worried. This man was fighting at a Jonin level, or at least a high Chunin one. While she was an elite herself, by flooding the ground with his chakra she could not sense when or where he was performing techniques. She would have died along with the rest of the team if Naruto hadn't warned them of the coming technique. They were at a significant disadvantage, furthermore she had her juniors to look after. Team, retreat back to the town. She ordered. The team looked to her and started ninja sprinting out of the combat zone. As soon as they reached the taller trees they jumped back up to the branches and started tree hopping back to the village. But before they could get very far a half-dozen kunais took root in Kurenai's back and the woman slumped and fell out of the tree onto the ground below, blood already seeping into the surrounding soil, staining it. The junior squad members stared in shock as the man suddenly came out of a shunshin in a tree in front of them. I can't let you leave just yet, he wagged his finger in a tisk tisk gesture, in return with reinforcements. He took out 3 kunai and threw them at the genin, but they were all deflected by Naruto, who had reciprocated by throwing another 3. Well. Someone just can't roll over and die, huh? The man smirked. What's your name, kid? The hooded boy only responded by slapping his chest and twisted his palm and muttered, Ichi, to himself. The man could not grasp the significance of that action, but he grinned. All right. I killed your teacher so easily, and you, a wet behind the ears genin, is going to stop me. Naruto spawned 2 Kaden clones and 2 Futon clones. Collaboration technique. Futon. Daitapa. Kaden. Gokakyu. The Narutos created a massive enhanced fireball that raced for the man. His eyes widened as the flames caught him in a blazing inferno. The surrounding trees caught on fire, but the fire died down as he cut off the chakra feeding the technique. All they could see were the smoldering remains of what appearing to be a pile of rocks, proving that the man used substitution to escape. Naruto's clones dispersed and he created 4 Raiden Bunshins who all drew their tantos. While he wouldn't admit it, he was worried for himself and his team. Even more so, the strongest person on the team was lying down in a growing puddle of her own blood. He looked around, searching for the enemy while Shino was spreading his insects all over in an effort to locate the man by his signature. Hinata turned on her Byakugan and did a double take as she looked at her teacher's corpse. Her countenance improved, but she didn't say anything. The man was suddenly among them and disposed of Naruto's clone first and suffered a severe electrical shock that made him grit his teeth in the pain. Naruto took advantage of his disorientation and slashed the man across his chest, only for him to collapse in a bunch of rocks that tumbled over himself, injuring his feet and making pain shoot through his bones. Arg! The blonde lost his balance and fell out of the tree onto his legs, hurting them more. The boy hissed in pain and created 2 clones who made an attempt to heal him. They were disposed of before they could start properly, and the boy found himself with his elbows locked at his sides and a kunai at his throat, courtesy of the Iwa nin behind him. Before he could react properly, his throat was slashed in all of its bloody waterfall glory. His teammates gasped. Hinata began to shed tears. Naruto looked as if he was gasping for breath but choked on his blood. His killer smirked, but the smirk fell when Naruto gave a bloody grin and laughed. The sub-wars continue. Boom. Naruto exploded, releasing rock shrapnel that dug into the man, wounding him severely. But the man himself turned out to be another Iwa Bunshin. Naruto came back into existence next to his teammates who sighed in relief, but Naruto kissed his teeth. Naruto wouldn't admit it, but it was annoying to fight someone who fought like him, always tapping out with clones. Before he could make a hypocritical remark about the man's excessive usage of clones, the man suddenly dropped out of the treetops 50 yards away, a bloody mess, and Kurenai dropped next to him. Naruto suddenly squinted his eyes in a glare and turned back to the woman's bloodied corpse. She was still there, but the woman was in two places. Naruto performed the Genjutsu Kai to reveal that it was only a log. But where the hell was she when they were fighting the whole time? Oi sensei, where were you when we needed you? We could have been killed, you know. The boy was furious. His clone got its throat cut for Kami's sake. That could have been him, Naruto thought heatedly. I was fighting the real one. All you were fighting were his clones. I had to make a call that you lot could fight them. After all, Iowa Bunshins are only known for decent durability, not might, skill or dexterity. She said calmly. Naruto stopped. He knew that already from experience. So you were fighting the actual battle when his clones could have killed us. Shino turned to Naruto who was seething. Now that I think about it, her choice of action was the best course the battle could have taken. Although you are a self-proclaimed ninjutsu brawler, all I am is a tracker and debilitator at best, and Hinata is in the same boat. Us genin would have been a dangerous liability around for the real battle. The Uzumaki shook his head. Shino, you're a rational thinker. Don't you realize what was really going on? We were distractions. This guy, whoever he is, had to divide his attention between us and Kurenai-sensei. He practically spat out the last. He had to keep us occupied, 'cause the second we finished off his clones, we would have ganged up on him. She left us alone just to bait this guy into looking in two directions the whole time. What if he had decided to hold us as hostages or something? Are we goddamn expendable? Just as I getting comfortable on this team, she nearly gets us killed. Figures. Do you see, Kurama? I need to create the Tenacious 13. I can't trust any of these people to watch my back. What the Aburame said made sense. She could have made shadow clones to help us. The whole time I thought she kicked the bucket. Now, I don't think I care if she had. He said out loud, both to his teammates and Kurama. Teammate was horrified. Quote, 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 quote. The bloody man on the ground chuckled with a grimace, still in pain. He's right, you know. He spoke to the genin. He didn't know why he was offering the information. His brother always told him that he talked too much, and Sato supposed that he was right. I had to keep sending clones to keep you distracted while I fought your teacher. I would have left you alone. I only did it because you would have been a real pest with Doden techniques. And see, I was right. The man's eyes half-lidded. But you're going to let me go. Kurenai snarled. Like hell, I will. I was just deciding how to finish you off. If I don't return to my dwelling place by nightfall, my chakra delay bomb tags will destroy the ceiling of the empty aquifer on which the town rests. If they explode, the ceiling will collapse, dropping the village into the aquifer, destroying it. Even though it's a small village, it will kill over 300 people. Naruto finished. If he really is using chakra delay bomb tags, then he has to put in chakra into it on a regular basis or they'll explode. Kurenai read the man's features. She could find no trace of a lie being told. She didn't know which would be worse, being lied to or being told the ugly truth. She deliberated with herself for another 5 minutes. All the pros and icons were level with each other. This man was an antagonist who attacked her team versus his probably false claims of his owning the land. He could be a missing nin versus he might be on an extended mission. His headband had no scratch. He could be lying, but they had nothing to gain if he died or captured, and a lot to lose if he was telling the truth. She made her choice. We'll let him go. Naruto hissed something to Shino who nodded. As the man limped off, Shino had one of his Kikaichu latch onto the man for tracking purposes, and the team retreated while the man watched them to ensure that they weren't following him. He finally left in a body flicker. He must have been injured with only superficial physical damage to even get up at all, but he left to lick his wounds nonetheless. Kurenai hoped she made the right decision. Naruto, in the awkward silence of the aftermath of what he'd said, was stewing in his own thoughts. If Hinata-chan had gotten killed, Kurenai would have left that guy's body to rot, that much I know for sure. Either way, if this man lives in or close to the entrance of the aquifer, it could be an ideal place to create the 13T, Kurama. The 13T. Yeah, it's getting old to say the full name all the time. Besides, I was going to create a symbol of that anyway. Sounds interesting. The aquifer will serve as some sort of suppressing factor to make sure that no detects the usage of my chakra. Did you tag the guy, Shino? Of course, Naruto-san. When we need to find him again, my Kikaichu will simply locate the pheromones secreted by the queen on him. That's good news. Maybe Kurenai-sensei would have forgotten that she still needed to keep the man under watch. There's no way that the guy tried to kill us over a bunch of trees. I agree. The two boys laid down in their beds and had a restless sleep, knowing that the man who they had met may really have bombs underneath the ground below them. And that's the end of part 3. Naruto has stepped onto a path where love fuels power and destiny refuses to let him stay human. If you enjoyed this chapter, like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fan Fiction. Comment, Limitless Part 4 inches if you want the next chapter with major fights and a shocking confession.